Let's chat. It's college time. Maybe I'm too old for college, but maybe you're not. Maybe your kids aren't. Maybe your grandkids aren't. But it's expensive to go to college if you want to go to college. But our friend Chris Bissonnette is here. Maybe he can give you some strategies on saving some money, like not going to Harvard, Chris.
You're not going to Harvard?
I wouldn't recommend anybody going to Harvard. I mean, and that's just my opinion watching what's going on. Of course, they don't like Jewish people there, so I'm in trouble. But good morning, Chris. Glad to have you with us.
Oh, thank you.
So I was watching the news last night, and kind of about the time that I found that you were going to be coming on the broadcast. I mean, I know you booked it, and I don't always look too early. But I saw that you're coming on, and all of a sudden I'm looking, and there's a segment on the FAFSA report, and that it's changing. And, well, the website is about as good as Obamacare, apparently, right now.
Yeah, so they've been talking about changing the FASFA website now it's been like 3-4 years. They were supposed to do it about 3 years ago, and they kind of pushed it off until this year. So FASFA normally you can file October 1st, but now it's January 1st. And then they made some major changes to it that will affect a lot of people.
So let me ask this question, though, before we get into some of these changes. Is the only way of doing it on the website, or are there other ways of filing your forms?
I don't think you can do it any other way but filing through FASFA.
FAFSA's website.
Yeah, FASFA.gov.
So it's not like you have on our taxes where you might have a easy form or
There might be a way to do that. They used to have a FAFSA form, but they no longer print them. So I think everything is online now.
Okay. And I saw there the comment, at least the way and again, it was on the news. It wasn't on Channel 4 because I don't watch NBC, but I thought they said they had cut it down to like 18 questions or something
it's 30,
like that.
It's like 30 something. It used to be up to 112 with the supplemental. So they've supposedly simplified the number of questions, but the real problem there is they're just merging categories together. And 90% of FAFSAs have mistakes or irregularity. So we're going to continue to see that.
So when you say that they merge it, so it means like there's question 1, question 1A, question 1B, question 1C. Is that?
I haven't looked exactly how they have it lined up because it just opened January 1st.
And that was only to a small amount of people from what I saw. They're really not opening it up to everybody until the end of the month or something.
Well, they were supposed to be open. They were supposed to do it on December 1st. Excuse me. And they got pushed off to January 1st. But people who went on
January 1st. Not only are they
1st,
3 years late, they also didn't get it even.
It wasn't done when it was supposed to be. But even if you went on January 1st, it says the site's unavailable. So I would imagine for the next probably 2 weeks, it's just going to be overloaded with so many people trying to get on it.
Especially being that it's. Didn't you say that they used to be able to start filing in October or something?
October 1st used to be the filing date.
So people are kind of worried right now.
Well, what's interesting is some schools require the CSS profile. That was still October 1st. So normally you file your FAFSA, then the profile. This year, no, school wants you to do the profile and then do the FAFSA afterwards. So it's kind of backwards. But a lot of people are stressed out on it.
Well, and you shared with me in the past, both on the show and not, that the questions are not really, the answers to the questions are not always straightforward.
Well, they make it very vague. It says, like, for example, what are your investments? And then people put their house in there. They put their IRAs in there. Those don't go there. So it's just, they make it so vague. And now they're merging it together. I can only imagine the mistakes people will make.
So it goes back to the same thing. If you want to get the real good results, you need to get professional guidance.
I tell people, listen, if you had for example, USC, popular school here, it's $92,000 a year. If you had a $92,000 tax bill, are you going to TurboTax, especially if it's kind of complicated, or are you going to use a CPA? So I believe that should be the same thing when it applies to filling out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. You should at least have someone consult you.
We figured $92,000 a year, and from what I see, a good number of people are taking over 5 years for that 4-year education.
5.6 years is the average.
5.6.
And 1/3 of freshmen changes majors or drops out. So people are picking the wrong school. They're taking too long. And then obviously if they're coming out with large student loans, about $41,000.
So you're looking at a $500,000 expenditure, or as the government puts it, an investment. And you're thinking about doing it on your own without seeking good counsel.
Yes, I have people that come to me, they file the FASFA, and then I'll go in and amend it because they've completely messed it up, and then they end up getting $30,000, $40,000 right off the bat.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Do you charge more than $30,000 or $40,000 to do that?
So sometimes.
So you're telling me before the broadcast today that there's some pretty significant changes coming up.
There's 3 doozies. Okay, so one, in the past, if you had 2 children in college, your expected family contribution was split in half. They're no longer doing that. So people who have 2 children in college are going to see a huge increase in what the family's supposed to contribute.
So wait. So you're getting penalized as far as from the government subsidies.
Yeah, you used to get like a discount if you had 2 children in college. There's no longer giving you that discount starting this year.
So you have to pick which kid you like best.
Yes.
I got Chris tongue-tied over here. Okay, so I guess that's probably not the good idea. Don't pick which kid. So if you were going to get, and I think one time you mentioned to me that you had somebody that got a $70,000 or $80,000 grant
Mm-hmm.
from NYU.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you have 2 kids, one going to NYU and one going to Cal State Fullerton,
that might be $35,000 now.
Wow.
As far as your grant goes, yeah.
That's a big change.
Well, it's going to shock a lot of people, especially the ones that have kids in school right now. They're going to be really shocked this year when it's like, why is it so much more expensive than last year?
Can you allocate it how you want to, or does it just get split down the middle?
Well, what they do is they take a look at your income and your assets as a family, and then they assign you a number. This year, it's called Student Aid Index. And then, so it used to be where it was discounted with 2 children in college. They're no longer doing that.
But what if I have one child going to USC and one going to Santiago College?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Santiago College, a junior college, doesn't cost hardly anything.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take my whole contribution to the USC child, or do I have to split it in half?
It splits in half. It used to split. They used to give you a discount in half, but what they do is they assign a number to the family based on income and assets.
Okay,
and then that's just the formula that they use.
It's a
little complicated. It's a little complicated.
From what I recall you telling me, when they assign a number to the family, as based on the income and assets, you have to know which income. It's because it's not the same as what you might be putting on your tax return, and you have to know which assets they really want to know about.
Well, the income now they use the IRS retrieval tool, so it's going to pull it in.
Okay.
But one of the problems with that, and I don't know if they've corrected it, but if you did a 401k rollover into an IRA, that counted as income on your.
So you have a one-time windfall.
So people would be like, "Why is my EFC number like 600,000?" And now you have to investigate and go, "Oh, it's because you guys had a $500,000 401k rollover. The system is kind of messed up. It pulled it in as income. We have to amend it."
Wow.
So even when you use the system, it was messing up. We'll see if they corrected that.
Continue our conversation. Chris Bissonnette, he is the FAFSA Pro. Learning about the changes in the FAFSA process. If you've never heard of FAFSA, that's the form that everybody who has a child going to college should be filling out, or even if you're the adult going to college, you should be filling that out. It's kind of like 1040. People know 1040. That's a tax form, right? FAFSA, that's the college financial aid form. And Chris has some special information to share with us because it's changing. And ignorant, if you think filling out the forms is tough, think about ignorance. It can be really, really expensive. Actually, I think that the term goes, if you think an education is expensive, try ignorance.
Yes, I would say, and just to kind of expand on that, the FAFSA is free application federal student aid, and everybody should complete it. I have the number one mistake Americans make with college. 35% of people don't submit their financial aid forms annually. Why? They don't understand it. They don't think they'll qualify. They miss it. And some schools require those forms for a merit-based scholarship. So even a scholarship based on your grades, like LMU, you need to submit a FAFSA. And some people don't even know that.
you wonder about it, and I don't know, Chris. I don't know if it's a blanket cost of doing it, and I don't want to ask you the cost. I'm just going to use hypotheticals from my thinking. So say it costs $1,500 or $2,000 to fill the form out. To have a professional guide you through the process of filling it out. I know 20 years ago, I spent $1,500 just on having a young lady help my son fill out his application the right way.
Yeah. So the application part of it, getting into the colleges, people charge $5,000 to $7,000 to get you in there. It kind of depends, it really depends. I mean, the way that I work is people kind of, ideally they do business with me, sometimes reposition assets or just do financial planning business, but people can also pay my hourly. But I do have some people where I go back and appeal the aid, which is another thing you can do. You go back to these colleges and say, thank you for the offer. However, it's a little light, and here are the reasons. And 70% of the time, the school gives more money. And so when I get people an extra $30,000 a year, well, they're very happy to, cover my time.
I would say they probably should be, right? So we got to number one of the three major changes.
Yes.
Probably should get to number one, and that was the fact that the discount or the benefit of having multiple kids going to school, that's gone away.
Yeah, multiple student discount is kind of what they call it. And they've talked about that for years now, but this year it goes into effect. The second one is...
Which is ironic, being that the president's been trying to eliminate student loan debt, yet they changed this right now.
Exactly.
Kind of odd.
Oh, it's going to make school college much more expensive for a lot of people. The second one is, for the FASFA, they didn't count small businesses under 100 employees. This year, they count small businesses with 0 employees. So that's going to be a little bit of a surprise that you're supposed to include now your small business. And then thirdly...
Wait, before you go on to that, because a comment that you made to me is, again, an area that's going to be very, very easily erroneously completed. Because you made a comment to me that, they want the value of the small business. And everybody that I know, I get a doctor or a lawyer, they come in and they say, what's the value of your business? Well, it's worth $1 million, right? Because it's their baby. It's something that they've worked their whole life to build. And is that the number that
No.
the number that I've got in my mind that my business is worth? Is that the number that I should be putting in there?
No, it's not. And I see that also as a mistake, especially with home equity, but it's the fire sale value. So what is the fire sale value? You got to sell it this week. So that should be a much different number than what the value of the business is. So most people don't know that.
Yeah. So if I had to sell my law practice this week and everybody knows that I have to sell it this week,
yeah, it's going to be a
million
much
went
smaller
down
number.
to 1,000 or something.
Well, yeah, much smaller number. So just remember, they're going to start counting small businesses now on the FASFA.
The bottom line there is, if you didn't listen to Ron Siegel Radio or talk to Chris Bissonnette, you wouldn't know that as being the right answer. Chris, before you go on to the third one, talk about, because one that you've told me about years ago was the home value.
Yeah, it kind of works kind of the same thing where people say, oh, what's your house worth? And, oh, it's worth 1.5 million.
He's pounding his chest for those of you that are listening on radio.
We don't really want it to be like this super high number. We want to know, what's the only real basis you can base it on is going to be the tax assessed value.
Sure.
And so that's usually a much lower number. So I always advise people to start there. Now, the school can come in and say, the schools that count home equity, which is a very small percentage, but your home equity, not like an investment property, but the school could come in and say, oh, well, we want to know what the value is, not the tax assessed value. I have never seen a school come back and challenge that number.
Okay, so and for most people, the tax assessed value is going to be a lot lower than the resale value of the current time.
Yes, unless it's like a brand new house, it usually is a lot lower.
Okay, so I'll just use my own example. Is my sister took over my mom's house post my mom passing, and my mom had bought the house in 1983. So the assessed value is like a third of what the resale value is, or appraised value. So she was able to go in, and because of me knowing Chris, she was able to go in and put that assessed value in there.
Yep, that's what I would use. And then the last major change is they used to, if people were divorced or separated, you would use the custodial parent would be the one that they live with 51% of the time. So that was real easy for people to say, oh, they live with, mom's not working, they should live with her. Well, starting this year, it's who provides the most financial support. Well, normally that's going to be the person that makes more money. And so that's going to be a big change for people in that category.
So, and again, that's going to be one that people are going to get wrong. And the other thing is how do you determine who provides the most financial support, right? If spouse A is paying, $2,500 a month in child support, well, spouse B, how are they going to say, okay, $2,500, yeah, that's good, but the house payment is X and the food is Y and the car payment, how do they figure that out? How are they going to determine that?
I'm sure a lot of it is going to be subjective. It's just that when people fill out these forms, they're very similar to your tax form, so people are very cautious. They always want to not lie on them. But I just find a lot of times people just put way too much information. They put the wrong numbers in the wrong places. Again, my suggestion for your listeners, if you're completing the FASFA or the CSS profile for the first time, you should have someone consult you on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity in there, and answering the wrong way could cost you a lot of money. We're going to talk more about that with Chris Bissonnette when we come back. So it's story time with Ron and Chris. That's the idea right now. We're going to talk about, we give away a lot of information. We share a lot of information on the broadcasts, and it becomes hypothetical until you put reality to it. So I asked Chris, maybe he's got some examples that we could share, and he's done this on the broadcasts in the past, but let's talk about some examples, Chris.
Yeah, so I'll give you two. So I'm working with a client now. They've been clients now for 4 years. They hired me, a couple in Newport Beach. They have 3 kids going to college, all Ivy League type schools. So they're panicked, right? This is like when schools are $70,000, $80,000 a year. Their income was not super high, so they should get aid as long as they don't have a lot of assets, but they had a lot of liquid assets, like $1 million. So I'm like, well, if we can reposition the $1 million, which again is all legal, and then file the FASFA, I think you're going to get aid. Go forward to today. They have a student at at Johns Hopkins University and one at USC, and both of those schools both of those schools each gave $68,000 in grants this year.
Wow!
So for 1 year, the client's family is receiving $140,000 in free money because they kind of had listened to my strategy. So over the course of college,
now, grants. Let's go back. Grants are the type of money that you want. You don't have to pay those back.
Exactly. So when you file a FASFA, that helps you qualify for scholarship, merit aid, like grades and sports, grants, which is usually need-based aid based on your financial situation. And then there's also work study as well as loans in there. So what I really try and focus on is getting people needs-based grants, which is money from the school you do not pay back. This couple here with their 2 children, they have a third coming up, probably will receive about $300,000 in grant money over the course of those 2 children's college duration. And then I'll give one other example.
300,000. That my math is a little slow here, Chris.
Well, just
140 this year.
Yeah, the year before it was a little less. So it could be.
I mean, you talk about 4 or 5 years. It's a lot of money.
It could be maybe 400,000. I mean,
it's a lot of money.
It's life-changing amounts of money.
Absolutely.
For some of these people, I get them life-changing. And then I'll give you one other example. Gentleman, students going to LMU, and he's like, I filed the FASFA, and I hear this a lot. I filed the FASFA, I got nothing. I assume, all these people think, oh, we'll get nothing. And then he heard me talking at the Irvine Chamber of Commerce, and he goes, well, I don't think I'm filling it out right, so I'm just going to hire you. So I amended the FASFA. Why? He had put his retirement accounts in the investment section. He had 3 properties, and they were all, current value versus tax assessed value. After we did that, within a month, LMU gave him a $30,000 needs-based grant. So within 1 month of hiring me, he got 30 grand. This year for the student, we expect to get about 50,000 in grants through Pell Grants and maybe a Cal Grant, as well as institutional aid from the school.
That's pretty significant. And then that doesn't even talk about the fact that you've mentioned to us in the past, and maybe even earlier in the broadcast, that sometimes people can hire you to do an appeal. Talk about what appeals do. Yes,
that's another very interesting aspect of the business. When I first started, people were like, "Oh, you can go back to the school, essentially like ask for more money." And I'm like, what do you mean? What am I buying a house here? Like, kind of. And so when I did my first one, it was like 5 years ago. It was Hamilton College in New York, and I was told by this kind of college planning guy back east that supposedly knows his stuff, said the most he gets about 10 grand. I said, great. I'd love to get an extra 10 grand for my clients. First appeal.
Who doesn't want to get an extra 10 grand?
Yeah, by just writing.
All you're going to get is 10 grand.
Yeah, by writing a letter, right? So
yeah.
The first one I did, and we got 18,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the very first one I did. Well, since then, I've done, 30 appeals. The best I've gotten, I have a client this year, they received 0 at USC, and then they bumped it up to 53,000 in grants from the appeal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are significant numbers.
The client's like crying on the phone, like he can't even believe it.
Well, what more do we have? I sometimes I go overboard, but what's our most important thing that we have to do? And it's our kids, right? I mean, anybody that's got kids knows that. I believe anybody that in my sphere anyway. That's our most important project, our most important responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can send them to the school that they want to go to instead of someplace else,
like Chapman.
Yeah, Chapman. I mean, I like Chapman. I'm still a fan. I still.
That's
go
a great
there.
School. I think it's like 90,000 a year now. So
well, all of them have gotten way overpriced.
Yeah, they're all the private schools are about 90,000. But the reason why you can appeal at a lot of these schools is because they have endowments. How much is in their endowments? Like USC, for example, any idea what's in USC's endowment?
$1 billion?
$8 billion.
$8 billion.
$8 billion. They have so much money. Harvard, your favorite college, I think has $53 billion in their endowment, which is more than half of the countries on earth have. Just that one school. So
I think Bill Ackman said he's not giving any more to them, though.
Well, they don't need any more. And so the point here is people sometimes think, well, I don't want to take the money from another student. Like when I appeal, these schools have so much money.
I know we're out of time here, but I'm going to do this real quick math. $53 billion. Chris, you might have to help me with this. It used to be when I had my license at Merrill Lynch, we used to say, okay, if you limit your spending to 4% a year, you never touch your principal.
Yeah, that's the whole 4% withdrawal rate thing. Yeah.
So that means if I'm doing this right, let's round it to 5% because it's easier math. That means at Harvard they could spend $2.5 billion a year,
plus
and never touch the principal.
The Harvard, all these accounts all get like 25-30% a year. Like they earn like these crazy rates of return.
Yeah, and then they don't have to pay taxes on them.
And they're nonprofit. And the whole thing's a sketchy thing. But the point here is the schools have plenty of money to give you if you know how to navigate it.
That's the bottom line. If you want some help in navigating it, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Not that I know how to do it, but I know how to get a hold of Chris Bissonnette.